Good morning and welcome to our October 2018 customer webinar. I'm Aaron Gillette, Marketing Director at townnews.com. Today, Derek Gebler, Vice President of Broadcast and Video at Town News, is going to give us a crash course on shooting live video. He'll discuss the benefits of adding live video production to your repertoire, tips and gotchas to help you out when you're on site, and how to make the most of your videos by distributing them on your website and social media channels. The presentation will take about 30 minutes and a Q&A will follow. At any point, you can type a question into the chat box, but we'll hold off on answering them until the end. Take it away, Derek.
Thanks, Aaron. Welcome. I'm Derek Gebler, and I'm the VP of Broadcast and Video at Town News, and I'm here to talk today about the basics of live video and live video streaming. This webinar will cover the high-level basics of single-camera live stream for local events. And what that means is this is not for mobile streaming. This is not a multi-camera streaming. This is a single camera. This is about the most basic way that you can get out there without having to add more people and more expense and all that. So I'd like to touch on some technical points during our time. However, there's a lot of technical stuff that can go into all of these things. And there's going to be a wealth of resources online in our online help articles that you can reference later on after this. So some background. Over the past 4 years, Field 59, which is now part of Town News, the Field 59 production team has produced over 200 live streaming events across the Midwest for large and small audiences. And a lot of this presentation comes from those experiences. And we learned all the wrong ways to do things over time. And so hopefully some of our experiences can help you get going with your experiences in the future. So let's talk about the benefits of live. So there's a lot of benefits to live. We can have unlimited audiences. It's unique, it's local, and because of that, it's promotable. And so if you can promote it, you can also make it sponsorable. So live social has built-in audience notifications. So you have a built-in audience, and as long as they're online, they can get some sort of notification that this event is going on. So a lot of the events I'll be talking about will be ones that are pre-produced, but this also can apply to breaking events as well. So you're building the engagement of your audience by pushing out these live streams, but also repeated viewings are also part of this idea so that after it's gone out, you can reuse the content for video on demand as well. So the types. The important thing for you to think about is to think local. And we've seen many types of local events get covered. We've seen public forums, debates, sporting events especially. That's a high driver of traffic. County fairs, parades, graduation ceremonies. Live or recorded, these events and your coverage of them are a service to your community. So if you've done a live event or are going to do a live event, let us know what it was and how it went, and I'd be really happy to hear, what new ideas are out there as well. So some things to consider before event, and this is really quick. To keep things as uncomplicated as possible, consider single camera events. So I kind of already touched on that. Definitely though, you want to consider legal or licensing in some situations, and this really only comes down to sporting and music. Make sure you've got the right to be there. A lot of the times, almost all of the times, if it's going to be a local public event, you're going to be okay. But sports and music may have some sort of, especially sports syndication rights you may want to check into. But we're assuming you've already kind of done the legwork on that. And so this is more about planning and logistics and day of. Also, make sure that you're keeping in mind some hidden costs. Travel expenses. If you're traveling further than your own local area, data plans. So if you're going to be using a portable hotspot, make sure that you have accounted for some of those hidden costs when you're planning out your event. So prep and logistics. So it starts with the venue. And what you want to do is investigate the venue. One thing that we've learned over the years is how good planning can help make a great event. So what are the factors that you need to consider? Well, you need to think about, is this going to be indoors or outdoors? I think outdoor immediately ups your complications. You've got to definitely consider more factors when you're doing an outdoor event versus an indoor event. Is it a public space? Is it a hotel? Is it a school? You need to scope out the location and you need to get an idea of where that camera can go. Ideally, you want the camera to be at the center of the room, about 20 feet back. You don't want to have to be zooming in too far, but you also need to make sure that there aren't any obstructions. You know, there was a venue we were at once and there was a pole in the middle of the room. Well, you're going to have to get around that. You're going to have to find the nearest Ethernet port. We recommend that you're doing wired streams as opposed to wireless. Find out where that Ethernet port is, and then you're going to have to work with your venue IT person later on about that. Locate where's your nearest electrical outlet. These are real practical things that will help determine where you can put that camera. Finally, you know, you've got to figure out where the venue provided soundboard is. Is there going to be a soundboard? Where is that going to be located? Is there a sound jack somewhere? I mean, not all these places are built for these sort of things. Most modern buildings, I think you're getting better with this sort of thing, but every venue is different. So you've got to do the pre-prep on the venue itself. So the next thing that you'd be thinking about is your logistics worksheet. So the logistics worksheet is very useful. I find that actually putting most of your information into the logistics worksheet makes things a lot less complicated when you're actually there the day of the event. So there's an example here of kind of what a logistics worksheet looks like off to the right side here. It's kind of standardized for your own benefit, but the basics that you need to do, that you need to have here is your venue contact. This is probably going to be the first person you talk to, and will probably be there the day of, and they will put you in touch with the next most important person, which is your IT person, if they have an IT person. Sometimes that's the same person, but the IT person is going to be able to help you find, do you have internet? Where do you get it? What ports do you need to open up? Doing this ahead of time is really important to get this all in one sheet, figure out who these people are, how can you get a hold of them, what are their mobile numbers, their emails, are they going to be able to be there during the day of the event, or are they're only available during the day and not at night? There are a lot of things that you should be figuring out, because you don't want to find out that the day that you get there, your IT person is actually at home or is unavailable. So that's the last thing you want to have happen. So also, I think this comes down to this logistic worksheet. While you're putting it together, you want to work on testing. So the first thing you should do with that IT person is get an internet test. So once you've located the Ethernet port that you're going to be using, you're going to want to do a speed test. And so it's essential to get a speed test. Either the IT person can do this ahead of time, or you can do it at the venue. There's a variety of free internet speed test services that you can use. And so once you actually find out how you're going to do it, you want to get at least 4 megabits per second up. That's for good video quality. Anything lower than that, now you're starting to get, you'll have to lower your bit rate going up. And so it's possible, depending on what you're going to be doing, but always shoot for at least 4 megabits per second going up. You're going to need a wired, dedicated internet connection. And so this is due to, if you're using a public Wi-Fi, the audience that's going to be there is going to be competing for your internet connection. And the more people that show up and start using the devices, the worse your connection is going to get. So also, this gets around some of these login web pages. So some venues, they're going to say, yeah, you can use our internet, but you've got to log in. There are some encoders, and probably most video encoders are not going to be able to handle a web login page. So you're going to definitely need to work out how you can get a dedicated wired connection. This is probably the most complicated part of the process, because there are other things that can happen that prevent you from getting your signal out of the venue. Wi-Fi hotspot backup. In the worst case scenario, you're going to need this to be able to get your production done. So Wi-Fi hotspot backup is going to have a commercial data plan on it, something that you've prepaid through your organization. Don't try to use your own personal data plan. You might be surprised by any overages you get. So next on our prep and logistics, you're going to need to be able to test your equipment. And so when you're testing your equipment, that means that you have to have enough on-camera storage for backup recordings. You're going to need to test your encoder. Now, there's an entire there are an entire selection of different types of video encoders that you can have out there, and there's probably an entire webinar just on that. But once you've selected an encoder, this is a key component to your live video kit. In the past, we've used Teradek videos, and they're small and they're portable, and they've got a decent base price. It's a bit of an investment, but it's under $1,000. It's dependable. It's hard. You can knock it around. Not that you want to, and it's durable and tough. Once you have that encoder, you're going to be able to put the technical information set up into your encoder ahead of time. Don't try to do that at the venue. Do this back at the office. Do this when you have a controlled environment. Input that information. You're going to need to have a live video publishing URL. That's something that our support team then can provide you. Usually when you get an account set up inside Field 59, this is something that we'll already provide you. If you don't have one, you're going to have to check to make sure you've got one of these things. But we'll provide you the URL and the stream name, and that's what you're going to enter into your encoder. Once you've set those up in your encoders, you're going to want to verify that that encoder can make the connection out to the general internet. And that just means that the encoder will give you, if you can't get out, the encoder is going to say error, can't connect, something like that. Sometimes you can check and see if it was a typo. There are other times when it's not a typo, and that's where you're going to need to work with the IT person. And this, if you're doing it at the office, that's one thing, but if you're actually testing at the venue itself, you'll need to work with their contact to make sure that they're not blocking you from using that internet connection. So also, the last thing on this is verifying your sound. And sound is another complicated issue, but we're going to keep it basic for the purposes of this, is that you are either working with a separate sound person or you're doing some on-camera sound. And so do a sound check. Check to see, you've got on-camera mic, or you've got some sort of mic you've already plugged into the camera. Make sure you're getting levels on that. Make sure the camera is responding correctly. Do a level check. If you're working with a separate team, they may not be available until the day of to test the event sound. And so that puts a little bit more pressure on you. It also means you're going to have to add some more time to actually getting in the venue. So, next step here is setting up an event inside the Field 59 Manager. You're going to have access. If you don't have access, make sure you get access. What you're going to be doing is setting up the event inside the Events tab, and there's online documentation for this as well. You're going to, first of all, set up your stream times. So make sure that the stream is going to start 5 minutes early. And this is just, it's nothing bad's going to happen unless, of course, they're not ready. So day of event, they're not ready to go yet. You may not want to set that stream to go yet, but that's where you'll have to work with the venue contact on that, or the event organizer themselves. But anyway, generally set it for 5 minutes early, and then add 30 minutes extra onto whatever you expect the event time to be. So if it's an hour long, set it for an hour and 30. These things tend to run over. They're not always exact. Also, make sure that you're setting a thumbnail and promotional image. So this is your chance to actually, this is where kind of the promotion side of things can kick in. If you've got an on-staff graphics person, or you're using promotions from some other online promotion for this event, drop that graphic in there. If this is a recurring thing, you may want to build out a graphics package that is consistent. So this is always the same thing you do every week, and you've set up your branding on that. Input that into the manager. You're going to want to then set the event to record on the stream itself. So this is something that Field 59 can do. The platform allows you to record the event for later purposes. And so make sure that you're recording the event here as well as on the camera as a backup. Lastly, you're going to want to set up a second event, which is just like this one, but you can set it up with different times and different dates. This allows you to see the event ahead of time, verify that the video works, hear that the sound is coming through. You just set that up. It isn't promoted to anybody. It's just something that you're using for your own internal testing purposes. So one thing to consider before your event is to decide whether or not you're going to be doing any social live streaming. And so that's where our video link live social connection engine can come in. You can decide whether or not you're going to be streaming to Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or Periscope or Twitter. They're kind of the same thing. Each service follows a similar construct. With an authenticated account, you create a key. And there are single-use keys and there's persistent keys. It would be really great if you're going to be doing more than one event, use the persistent key. That means you can set this up once and use it over and over and over again. If it's your first time, you're going to need to send our video support team that key information so that people, once it's set up, we'll set it up inside our streaming servers, and then it's always good to go. That's why you give us the persistent key and you set it once and then you move on and never have to come back to it. Please remember that each platform has its own rules for video advertising as well. So if you plan on doing any advertising, you're going to do some sponsorships, you're going to be doing some sort of other promotion outside of the stream, on the web page, wherever, on different channels, that's great. But there are different rules between the three social platforms there of how inline video advertising is treated. I can't get into it on this call right now, but it's documented on what they will allow and what they won't allow. But remember that you also have full control over your advertising when you're streaming to your own publications and your own sites. So just because you have social streaming here doesn't mean that you can't stream to your own website. In fact, this is built to stream everywhere. So definitely put it on your web page, run some pre-rolls on it, promote your own landing pages, use those social channels to grab some additional audience. It's up to you to kind of figure out how you're going to mix and match that kind of thing. So once that's all been set up, like I was saying, set up your website as well. Make sure that you set up a landing page. So grab the video embed code from the manager and add this to an article page in Blocks, or you can add it to some other website, such as a sponsor website. And in those type of situations, those are going to be the things that you're going to be promoting ahead of time. If people come to those promoted pages ahead of time, that's where your thumbnail image is going to come in handy. That thumbnail image is going to show the event isn't live yet, but the video player is going to show the next time that the event is going to start. Plus, then the graphic will be there and people can see it, and they're not going to be able to play anything until the day of or the time of that it actually starts. Also, make sure that if you are going to be doing chat's a handy thing, but make sure you've got that set up as well, especially if there's going to be a Q&A or some sort of discussion, especially in a public forum. That's a pretty handy thing. But then that also requires somebody on staff to not only be running the camera and the video equipment, but somebody else needs to be moderating the chat as well. So promote your event ahead of time. That's a pretty obvious thing, and there's a lot of different ways to promote it. And then set up your analytics. So each platform that you're going to set up, if you're doing social live streaming, each platform has its own analytics. But if this is the first time you're setting this up inside the Field 59 Manager, you may want to give us your Google Analytics code as well, so that we can set that in, so you can track that from your perspective. So, next step here, now you're at the day of the event. So what do? You arrive super early. You try to get there at least 2 hours ahead of time. Don't expect to get this ready by 1 hour ahead of time. I know that schedules are tight, but you definitely need to give yourself enough time. That can burn you in the end. Have a live video kit. So a live video kit can be a case. It could be a milk, carton case thing. It could be a backpack. We use a Pelican padded case, and it has enough gear for your camera and your tripod and some other things. Tripods don't always fit into those, especially if they're bigger tripods. A tripod might be carried separately, but bring your own Ethernet cable. We found that 100 feet is really probably the most ideal, especially if you're going to be putting your camera pretty far away. So in this picture that's on the screen here, the run of the Ethernet cable went from this camera in the audience of this theater back behind, along the theater seats, out the door to the left, up a staircase, kind of in the back, And so 100 feet made that run. There's a little bit extra. So you don't want to run it further than 100 feet. I think after a while the signal degrades, but 100 feet is acceptable. Once you've got everything wired, and I almost forgot to say, bring your own electrical too. Don't think that someone's going to bring electrical for you. Bring you know, a long extension cord, also one of those breakers, you know, something that you can plug into, a power strip. Once you have it all laid out and put down on the floor, use gaffer tape. Don't use duct tape. So gaffer tape is a cloth-based tape that leaves minimal residue. So tape down all those cables for safety. And then sound equipment, if you're doing your own sound, always bring an extra bag of sound cables with you. So we always have kind of like a grab bag of different length cables, especially if we're going to hook into somebody else. They may not be willing to share their cables with you. So, but if you're doing all the sound yourself and you've got the mic on your camera, you're going to be just fine. So be prepared during your live event. So retest all of your contact points before you set up. So you've tested it once, hopefully at the venue days before, and now you're at the venue and you're going to retest everything. Verify that the camera's working, verify the stream is working, verify the sound is working. These are all things that you can't assume just because it's tested once and it was fine a couple days ago or weeks ago, something might have changed. Also, monitoring the stream. If you can avoid it, don't try to monitor to the stream yourself. You need to focus on other elements while producing. So have a colleague off-site check in before and during the stream. That way you can not only, you know, you want to see what it's like outside of where you're at. And so there's some coordination that has to go into it. You may not always have that, but it's really handy. It lets you focus on the things you need to get done. Camera usage, definitely use a tripod, of course. There are a lot of different tripods out there, monopods. Monopod is not suggested, but a tripod, a heavy tripod, one that probably can get you, and you can raise it up at least 6 feet or more. You can see in this picture on the right side there at that event, there's people sitting down in the audience. There's no slope of the floor. That means you've got to raise the camera up to get above those heads so you can see the people that are sitting at that table in the front. Also, make sure that you limit the movement of the camera for a stable image. So if you're getting further back and you have to zoom in on your subjects, every movement will be amplified. Even if you're using an image stabilizer, it's going to affect your image of how it's perceived to your audience. So try to limit movement, especially if you've got things raised up. Lastly, check your exposure. So your exposure is going to be all dependent on the rooms that you're at. I would expect when you're doing live events, expect it to be non-professionally lit. It's going to be a room with fluorescent lights, and it's going to be dim. So another reason why this picture's on this page is to show you that the exposure of the room is pretty dimly lit, but using the camera, we're able to bump up the exposure manually so that you can get a better quality picture. It's important to know about your white balance too. Know the different types of light. Fluorescent obviously gives off a green hue, incandescent is giving off a red hue, and outdoor is going to be generally on the blue side. So there are, depending on camera to camera, each camera has a different type of white balance. If you can, though, be aware of it. You may not be able to control it. And so you'll have to work with each situation the best you can. A lot of these places, automatic white balance is probably going to be fine. But we've been in some situations where there's a mix. There's a mix of daylight coming in from a window, and then you've got some overhead lights. How do you expose for that? That's trial and error, unfortunately. But it's good to be aware of. And then, again, on-camera recordings. Make sure that you hit record on that camera as a backup for your recording. We want to think that you've done everything you can to make a perfect event, but there are always going to be glitches that happen. And in case that happens while your stream is going out, you want to have a backup recording on camera just in case something like that happens. You know, you may not need it, but it's really handy, and then you can upload that later to all the platforms you were going to put it to. You can upload it back into the Field 59 Manager as well. So after your event, It's important to set some expectations here. People are leaving. You want to wait until everybody's out of the auditorium or wherever everyone's at, so that you can get access to the tape, but you've taped down everything on the floor. You really can't do that while people are leaving the venue. Pack it up. Remember that your cables and connections are still there in the room. Don't leave anything there, especially if you've just bought a brand new cable or something. Carefully roll the cables back up into your travel kit. As you're rolling them up, you want to be aware of kind of the natural roll of a cable. Don't crimp them. Don't roll them too tight. And then just make sure that when you're putting all of your equipment back into your kit, that you're not closing the lid on anything. Full recording is, while this is happening and you're putting everything away, the full recording, if you've recorded on the Field 59 Manager, is now processing automatically for you. And it'll be ready, and if you did a 1 hour event, it should be ready before 1 hour. It should be fairly quick. Probably by the time you leave the venue, it'll be ready. If not, by the time you get back, it'll be already there. So once that's there, you can make that full recording available to your audiences. And it should be easy for you then to repost onto your site or wherever you want. Live social platforms will also be doing this automatically for you as well. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you want that to be available as is. If you want to make some edits or corrections, totally up to you. But each of these live social platforms also has their own set of analytics. Make sure that you're sharing your analytics if you need to with staff, or if you have a sponsor that needs to know that, that's where Google Analytics comes in, and that's kind of normal stuff at that point. Lastly, edit a highlight reel. So a highlight reel, you can use the Field 59 Manager editing. We have a trim tool that's inside of there that can trim up multiple clips, and then you can drop them into a playlist that can be shared after the fact. Otherwise that, or you can edit a highlight reel with some other editing system that, in that case, you could actually just trim a 2-hour broadcast down to maybe 15 minutes. But setting it up and putting it into chunks and putting it into a playlist that people can watch allows you then, if you want to, also put pre-rolls in each one of those little clips videos as well. So it adds additional revenue opportunities for you. So let's see, here we are. We're at the end of our wrapping it up. For a successful live streaming event, it comes down to the basics, which are a lot of preparation. The more you front load your event prep, the better off it's going to be. And 2, you want to test and then test again. So these 2 things, in addition to compelling content, which is your local content, that is the key. That and quality video will help tremendously. The first couple of live streams are going to take some effort. And so there's a lot that I glossed over in this presentation. We'll have a lot more help articles after this. But with everything in practice and patience, you and your team will be able to start streaming to your community. And so we're really happy to help you. If you have questions, if you're looking for more detailed information on what type of encoder to use, we're really happy to help you out there. So with that, happy streaming, and we're on to the question and answer part of things.
Actually, it's funny you should mention the encoder, because the very first question we got was, what was the name of the encoder again?
Oh, that's called, that's Teradek Vidiu, Vidiu, Teradek Vidiu.
Okay.
And it's about the size, it's about the size of a very small box that you can put and slide in on the shoe of your camera on the top of your camera.
Do you have any other suggestions as far as the kit goes? Any specific items that someone who wants to get started in local video should be looking at?
So in the kit that we use, we've got obviously the camera. The camera has its own case inside of the kit. Typically, we bring along a soundboard, a portable soundboard, 4-channel, 8-channel, something small. We bring along a wireless mic, a lapel mic if you need it. A lot of times the wireless stuff is really good and clear, but the way that some of these events and forums go, It just isn't practical. Take a look at some of the shotgun mics. Often a shotgun mic with a very narrow focus will get you pretty close to what you need for some of the sound quality that you're looking for. So shotgun mic, and then that all goes into the kit. Like I said, an electrical cord of 25 to 50 feet. Also, always bring along what do you call it? The thing that you put all you can plug in more things into.
Power strip.
A power strip. Bring along a power strip, and then lastly, different types of sound cables. So if you're using a soundboard, that means you have to connect your soundboard to your camera, and so you'll need to make sure that you have cables for that, cables for the wireless mics. Just in general, different types, different lengths of cables. You want to have a sound cable that will plug into your camera. That was something. Make sure that you're not scrimping on that if you're doing it, because you want a good quality camera cable that's shielded, minimize some of the hum and buzz. But you can fit a lot of that into this travel kit. You can have two types of travel kits. We've got the one that's larger with a soundboard, and then we have one that can fit into just a small bag. But doing that, you just got to remember to bring along the tripod. I've forgotten the tripod once or twice. So if you want to improvise on the tripod, but that's not recommended. Always have a backup tripod too. I've got one of those ones that's got like a bendy neck that you can clamp onto a table. That works too.
Okay. It looks like this is not for digital SLRs or even smartphones for the most part. Which kind of camera are you recommending we use for this?
I think a digital SLR would work if it's got video, that it can do video, and it has an HDMI port out. The video that we use uses HDMI, and so it's an HDMI to mini HDMI connection. So if you have a digital SLR that has video and an HDMI port on it, that can connect to an encoder that you can use. A lot of what I went over does not get covered. Some of it gets covered by a mobile phone. There are different requirements for mobile phones. You definitely need to worry about, now you're only communicating wirelessly. You can't plug that in. You've got power issues, battery life, that sort of thing, stability. You can lock that down to a tripod too. It just becomes a little bit more difficult for you. But it's definitely something you can do. But this is kind of one level above that, I think.
Okay. Do you need an encoder if you're live streaming an event with a mobile device?
You could. So you would need some sort of software encoder on a mobile device then. So there are a couple out there. The one that we have been using is from Wowza, which is called Wowza Go Coder, but we've investigated other encoders software that run. I think there's one called Live Air. There's a couple that are able to be run on your phone, but you do need something to get the signal out and up to our system. That's the best way to do it. Now, each social streaming platform allows you to stream directly from their app, but nowhere else. So if you use the Facebook Live app to stream only to Facebook, a lot of what you would miss out on is the ability to record it from the Field 59 Manager and other things. So it kind of limits where you can put your video.
Okay. What are your thoughts on using a capture card and laptop for software-based encoding?
I guess I didn't cover that, but that is definitely a way to go too. You can actually bring along a laptop and have software running on your laptop and plugging a camera into that too. I shouldn't have left that out, but that has happened and people do use that, and there are several free software versions that you can use for that as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Laptop, if you're doing it in that case, the only thing I'd recommend is that make sure that that's a dedicated laptop and you're not doing anything else while the stream is going on. But yeah, what I was talking about, the video is a hardware based, so it's very efficient function and what it does, but definitely you could do that on your laptop as well. There's probably a couple more steps then in that case.
Okay. What are the advantages of using the Field 59 Video Manager instead of feeding to any generic RTSP server, something like OBS Studio or whatever?
Well, I think that in that case, you're running that yourself. So if you've got a server running that software on it, the advantage is that Field 59 then is doing a lot of the work for you. If you're used to running that yourself, that's your decision. I think it comes down to personal preference in some cases. If you're already using Field 59 and you're using it in conjunction with the Blocks platform, the video recordings that are made from that are automatically created and then can be automatically ingested and ready for you to use on your website without having to do a lot of uploading and downloading.
Okay. Can you explain what a soundboard is for folks who are not familiar with that?
Sure. It's a little if you didn't do sound without a soundboard, you would most likely be plugging a microphone directly into the camera itself. And some cameras allow you to adjust the sound manually on the camera, usually through some sort of control. That doesn't allow a lot of flexibility if you need to pull something up or bring something down. A soundboard is a separate piece of hardware that can anywhere be from 100 to 200. I mean, there's very elaborate ones, but a very small soundboard will then allow you to plug your mics directly into that piece of hardware. So say you had 2 microphones or 3 microphones, each one is being plugged into that. And then that allows you to control the audio levels, the gain. You can try to reduce some of the artifacting that's happening. That can then sit outside of your camera. That can be controlled separately and mixed separately so that you can have a better control over what you're hearing. But it's a separate piece of hardware.
Okay. Do you have suggestions for a good type of event that is easy for my first one? Is something indoors easier than outdoors, or should length of time be the most important? Should we try to do a city council meeting versus a football game, etc.?
Yeah. I would say that the indoor ones are easier, and definitely if it's something that is someone doing a city council meeting would be a good one to try to do, where that would add some difficulty in that a city council meeting is there's going to be a lot of different people talking. So, but if you have a shotgun mic, 1 camera, city county building, it's a public building, hopefully they have decent internet connection, that should be a good starter for that. Something that I know that anytime you go to a venue that's older or is unknown to you or is outside, it just introduces new problems that you need to solve and are solvable problems. But for your first time, I would do something that's a more controlled environment. I don't think the length of time matters, though. Okay.
Can you make the checklist that you showed in the slideshow available?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
We will do that.
Specific question about the Field 59 Video Manager. Where do we find our Field 59 URL?
So that would be something that if it wasn't provided to you right away, that's something that you'd file a support ticket, and then we can get that to you and say, here's where it is.
Okay.
So it's not publicly exposed inside. You won't be able to see it, but we'll get you the information for it. Okay?
Okay. It looks like that is all of the questions that we have for now. Please, if you do have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box while I go through the final spiel here. Derek, would you mind advancing to the next slide?
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
There are many ways to stay connected with us. First of all, we will be at NAB Show New York, so you can stop by our booth October 17th and 18th in New York. Documentation for all of everything we've talked about here is available on both help.blockcms.com, and some of it will also be available on field59.com/help. Support is available at 800-293-9576 or support.townnews.com. And our partner community is a great place to swap ideas with other customers and ask questions. Service status is available at townnews.status.io, and you can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. We also offer a number of email newsletters that you can sign up for. Visit townnews.com and click the news link, and you'll see a sidebar that has all of the newsletters you can sign up for, including a broadcast and video newsletter that covers specifically the types of things that we've talked about here today. So if you're not signed up for that broadcast and video newsletter, please visit townnews.com, click news, and sign up for that today. And that is all. Thank you very much, Derek. That was extremely informative. We will talk to everyone next month. Look forward to talking to you in November. Thank you.